Okay, guys, time to kick off the Mac Forum Sunday night video chat. Got my trusty New Orleans Saints mug here, uh, fresh off of the Super Bowl win from a few years ago. Football season is almost upon us. Preseason doesn't count, by the way. That's okay. Um, haven't watched any of the preseason games so far. Don't plan to. We're going to kick off tonight. Maybe a kind of short show. Just it kind of depends on how long it takes to work my way through what we have on tap. Speaking of which, a couple of things I want to comment on from the Cult of Mac Weekender email that I got a couple of days ago. And Rad Dave is gone for the night. He assures me that he did not get eaten on his trip to the zoo. In fact, they decided to bypass the zoo given the heat and humidity in the Knoxville area this past week. But he's off with enjoying friends and real people. He will hopefully be back with us next week. As usual, Van Smith is off doing God knows what, God knows where, somewhere in Canada, I presume. Okay, as far as this goes, this may be a short show. We'll see how long it takes to get through the stuff that I have for the night. Couple of things in no particular order. I didn't check the newest member stats tonight. Sorry, I forgot about that. I was kind of in a rush to grab a bite to eat and get the show started somewhere close to on time. We'll check that out in a second. Probably before the end of the show, we'll run those stats as we've been doing lately. I do want to mention, of course, those of you that are in the Yosemite public beta probably know this already, but the second public beta dropped earlier this week. The developer beta is a couple of versions ahead of that. I think they're on either 6 or 8. I'm not sure at the moment. So that's, there's a little bit of a difference there. I've only been running the beta 2, public beta 2, for about a day and a half now. Had a little bit of trouble getting it downloaded Thursday night and really did not have time to mess with it and figure out what the error was. Turned out it was an error on my part. It does not like it, for those of you who may not know. I tried downloading. I was booted into my Maverick installation, and I was going to let it download while I was working on something else, and then run the installer and apply it to my Yosemite beta, but the download may not have liked that, because I tried several times to get in Thursday night. Got an error each time. Come in Friday evening after work. Downloaded and booted into Yosemite in the initial beta, and got the new beta, got beta 2 downloaded in no time. So that may be an issue. If you are part of the public beta and you're having trouble downloading it, try booting into the initial beta and download from there and see if that has any impact on your problem at all. So far, both of the betas have been remarkably stable for me. I'm not having a lot of issues. I know I'm going to have a few things that need to be upgraded. That's always the case when you shift OS. So far, nothing major. And anytime there's a major update that's necessary, you do something like Photoshop or something like that, I always have to ask myself, which one do I need more? Do I need the new OS features, or do I need that and pay for the upgrade, or do I stick where I am and keep the program that I have in place? and it just kind of depends on what your needs are. For me, there are only a handful of programs that I think are really critical to what I do every day. Some of the others are nice, but they're not really that necessary or mission critical for me. So that's always a decision, no matter what OS you're working with. I haven't experienced any huge problems yet. So far, the programs that I think are going to need possibly updating have been relatively minor, and so we won't spend a lot of time on that, because by the time the final release is out, I'm sure a lot of these will have Yosemite clean versions already in place. Do want to mention a couple of things that I noticed this week. A couple of them coming from Cult of Mac. But one of them I want to be sure, before we get to that, I want to hit a couple of tips that I stumbled on this week. One of them entirely by accident. I'm sure all of you are familiar now with QuickLook. It's been in the last several OS releases, where you can single-click a file in the Finder and tap the spacebar, and it will open up a preview of that file. If it's a audio file, it will play the audio. If it's a video, it will play most of the formats that QuickTime understands, can play in QuickLook. It'll QuickLook Microsoft Word documents, a number of other file types that it will give you a preview of, and then you can open it in whatever the default application is. And I've known that. I use QuickLook a lot. In the past, what I've done, if I had to select several files, what I've done is I click on one of the files, tap on the spacebar to bring up QuickLook, and if I needed to move to a different file that was in the same folder, I would use the arrow keys to navigate to that file. And QuickLook would update itself and show me a preview, attempt to show me a preview of whatever file happened to be highlighted. Well, today I was moving 3 or 4 files from the desktop onto an external drive, and I had 3 of them selected, and when I hit the trackpad, instead of dragging, I accidentally right-clicked on the file, and I see in my right-click in that menu, in that context menu, opportunity that says QuickLook these 3 files. And I either didn't know you could do that or didn't remember it. I don't know which. Probably did not know it, had never tried it before. Well, if you have multiple items selected and you tap on the spacebar for QuickLook, what comes up is the following. The normal QuickLook window pops up, and it's got left and right arrows. These navigate through the items that you selected. So you QuickLook the first item in the selection, and now when you hit the right arrow, it goes to the second one. You hit the right arrow again, it goes to the third, and so forth. And you can always back up by hitting the left arrow. Nice thing about this, I noticed that there was a little grid there in the top of the QuickLook window when I had one of the items open. And that grid, if you click on that grid, it does something which is kind of cool, which I know I did not know this, because I would be using it more often. And that is, what it does is it puts up a thumbnail of the items that you selected. So in other words, in the QuickLook window, let's say you've selected 3 items, and you tap the spacebar, and the QuickLook window comes up. If you hit that grid, I think it's a 2x2 grid. If you hit that little picture of the grid, then it puts all 3 of those items in the QuickLook window, and you can pick which one you want to preview first. Very handy thing especially if you've got something like JPEGs and PDF, a JPEG in particular, or you got two items with similar titles you want to go through. Having that, being able to look at them in 3 or 4 together and pick the one you want is a really neat way to do it. As I say, I am pretty sure that I did not know that last little tidbit. Another little tidbit for those of you that are using the iPhone. Now, I have not checked this on iPhone operating system 6. I know it works for 7 because I tried it on my iPhone 4 earlier today. I don't do a lot of texting. I'm not a member of the texting generation, I guess. Not very good at it, not very fast at it, and one of the things that's very annoying is I can never seem to remember all the little symbols for the emojis that are common in text messaging now. I can't remember even the common ones sometimes. But there's an interesting idea. And I did not know this. I saw this morning. Sorry, I do not remember what website I stumbled upon this. I think it was on a tip from Cult of Mac. I'll try to find the video for you and post the link in the notes. Let's say you're on your iPhone and you want easy access to emojis without having to remember all the what to type to get to the particular icon that you want. Go to, on your iPhone, go to Settings, and then General, and then Keyboard. And in that list of keyboards, you will find different languages: English, traditional Chinese, Japanese, etc. In the list of languages, one of your options is emoji. Now, if you add that one to the list, it doesn't override your language setting. It just gives you a second setting for keyboard. When you get out of that menu and you go back to, say, iMessage, and you have the text keyboard up to start typing, if you notice, just to the left of the space bar, now you will see an icon. It's a little globe. If you tap right there, you can then choose among the various keyboards that you've added. So, for example, let's say you've added a Chinese keyboard, an English keyboard, and emoji. You can choose which keyboard you want to use from that. That's how you get to the emojis. You don't have to have, mine right now has just the English and emoji. I don't have like Chinese or any of the others set up because I don't have a need for them. But you could do that. And there's some other tips involved with using that effectively and quickly. But it's a neat little thing, and then you can scroll through and find the emoticon that you want without having to really remember what all of those things are, what little key you have to tap. So there we have it for this week. We had the Mac tip with with QuickLook, and also the iOS tip with the emoji keyboard. Now, the iOS tip, although I tested it on the iPhone, should also work on any of the iOS-based devices. I have not tried it with iOS 6 because, to be honest with you, my wife would not prefer that I not mess with the settings on her iPhone. For some strange reason, she thinks that when I touch the settings on electronics, I will confuse them in such a way that no one else but me understands what I've done to it. And unfortunately, she's probably right. Given my history of doing things that have confused her, I'm not allowed to touch her phone unless absolutely necessary. That's probably a good thing, given that the last time I touched her gateway, I think I broke the DVD drive within about 2 days of buying the machine. So, you know, hey, It's a gateway. What's the problem? It's not like I broke a real computer, okay? Um, but that gives you a little bit of an idea of something that you can do with iPhone with with the current iOS system. I think that's going to stick around in iOS 8 probably. It's a real handy feature. It looks like it's going to be a real handy feature. Speaking of iOS 8, if you get a look at the Cult of Mac site, if you missed the keynote, they have a little bit of info about what is coming in iOS 8. And one of the things that they are interested in is seeing extensions more widely used. Okay? iOS 8 will bring extensions to your iPhone and your iPad. And the extensions are essentially miniature versions of applications. They can run inside of other apps. For example, if you have Evernote installed, okay, you could pop up the Evernote extension while you're inside Mail and save a snippet of that email into your Evernote account. Cult of Mac has more about this and a couple of extensions that they would like to see. One or two of them are already being tested, etc. One of them, I believe, is iPassword. I'll post a link to that info in the in the show notes in just a little bit. That's one of the things that I like. To me, extensions almost seem like they're going to be a natural progression of data detectors. If you're familiar with data detectors, you know that, for example, if you're in a message or something of that nature, and you tap on a date, then it realizes that that's a date and wants to add it to your calendar. So you're in that kind of a setting where you kind of have an understanding of what's in front of you in terms of if this is a piece of data that looks like a date, it's going to offer to go to calendar. If I tap on an email address, it's going to do things email related. All of those kinds of things are what you can do with data detectors. And extensions seem to me to be a continuation of that. In other words, if you have an app that supports extensions, you can be inside of one app with that and do something without having to fully launch the second application. That is going to make things, if it's handled properly, should make things very nice to deal with. You don't have to remember, oh, I can do it this way. It may offer to help you. We're seeing, I think, the beginnings of that in the sense that in some things it's made it easier to do things like when you, on your Mac, for example, you right-click and your option in some cases is send it in an email, send it in an iMessage, things of that nature. So I think we're going to see more and more of that. I think we'll probably, over time, see more and more of those kinds of features creep into the Mac operating system, either in addition to or in place of things like data detection. The nice thing about data detection is that you don't have to figure out what application can handle it. If it's in a certain standardized format, the Mac figures that out for you. The only time there's a real problem is if you, let's say you're typing something and you didn't intend to put it in date format, but you accidentally, put the numbers into a format that looks like a date. When you touch that date, then calendar is going to offer to come in and take things over for you. but that's a minor inconvenience. It doesn't happen as often to me as I thought it would. I'm liking, for example, things like being able to add dates to the calendar by using Siri, which you can do now if you have something that supports Siri. I'm liking that a lot. I'll like it more once I get my iPad fixed. I managed to practice screen. But those are the kinds of little touches here and there, nice little touches that make being a Mac user right now kind of fun. The way all these things are kind of integrated. If they're able to get iPhone operating system 8 handing off phone calls to the Mac and vice versa, as they demonstrated through the keynote, that's going to be interesting. Telephoning, i.e. the ability to use your Mac as a telephone and in conjunction with a phone, has been around since probably System 7.4 or 7.5, if not before then, but it's been kind of kludgy. And some of the software just hasn't been very stable. So this is going to be an interesting approach. One of the things that I know I'll like, once I finally get an iPhone that will support iOS 8, when they demonstrated shifting calls between the iPhone and Mac, I got it immediately because just a few days before that, my friend Ken and I had been talking, and when he was on PC, he used FaceTime only. But now, I mean, he used Skype all the time. But now that he's shifted to Mac, most of the time he will do a FaceTime call with me. And we had done a call a couple days before the keynote, and I happened to be away from my computer when he called, so I didn't want to try to race through the apartment to get to the keyboard, and I answered it from my iPhone. And I thought, well, surely when I get to my keyboard, I can transfer this over easily. Figure out that either it couldn't be done, or it was difficult to figure out, one or the other. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm saying I never figured it out. When I saw the keynote and saw how seamless they're trying to make this, I thought my first reaction was, that's what this is supposed to be. That's what this should be like. So it's kind of interesting to see. I know there's probably going to be, as these things progress, some concern that we're making the Mac too much like iOS and vice versa. But the results of it look kind of interesting. We'll just have to see how this plays out. It should make for a very interesting release when that comes out. It appears this week that a number of vendors are expecting the iPhone 6 to drop in early September. We'll see how that goes. My nephew swears to me that he knows the date. It'll be in September. And if he's right, that snuck past me on all the reading the last couple of weeks. But we'll see, and it should, as usual, be interesting. I'm expecting to see that there'll probably be reports of the lines around the block at most Apple stores. You know, the other thing I wanted to mention, it's kind of interesting, and maybe will become a point of discussion in light of a previous thread that we had on the forum. Earlier this summer, we talked a little bit on the forum about privacy issues with computer technology and some of the things that are coming up and what impact they have on your personal privacy. And I saw on Cult of Mac an article about someone who, his name is Anand Sharma. Excuse me if I did not pronounce that correctly. But his goal is to become what they call the most transparent human. And I couldn't quite figure out what they meant by that, so I had to read the article. And what it is that he's got, some devices that record personal data, such as pulse rate and the like, and tracking, where he's been, what he's eaten, for it, and then posting that on his blog. So, for example, at the time they wrote the article, if you went to his blog, you would discover that in the period of, I think it was 171 days, he had eaten 17 burritos over that span of time. And that the day before one of his posts, he had been to Starbucks to get a cup of coffee. And they had the Cult of Mac gang had an interesting discussion about that and about how much of it he does automatically. Right now, the information that he's sending to the blog is through a couple of apps that are fairly automatic in terms of updating themselves and pushing out to the blog. So he has to do very little intervention. And one of the things they asked about was privacy, kind of in a roundabout way. And his approach was that right now, the data he's putting up there, you can't do very much with. I mean, for example, how does it help somebody to know what his pulse rate was? Or to know that he had, that he was at a Starbucks earlier, the day before or last week, or if he happened to be in essence, if he goes to a Mickey D's, what are you going to do with that? Well, I see his point, but I think there may be a larger issue here in terms of what do you do if people start aggregating that kind of data? In other words, let's suppose that instead of just going to a fast food restaurant and having a burrito 17 times in the last 180 days, he goes 3 or 4 times a week and he has a jumbo burger, fries, and a tub of soda. Okay? Not picking on any particular fast food restaurant here. At some point, I suppose, that data could be aggregated to say, okay, you, sir, are not eating healthily enough, therefore you should be paying a higher insurance premium. I don't think that's the way the data will be used right now, but the capability to aggregate that kind of data is there. And I don't know necessarily that most people would like that kind of consequence. It's kind of interesting that he's doing that. I'm sure some people would find it interesting. I generally don't need to know that level of detail about somebody else's life. They certainly don't need to know that level of detail about mine. I lead a very boring life. But at some point, somebody's going to start aggregating that kind of data. We've already seen instances to attempt to monetize, in the sense that there are celebrities, for example, that are trying to, because they have large numbers of Twitter followers and etc. How do they get to where they can collect money off of those if they recommend a certain product, or they are seen using a particular brand of shoe or a particular drink or something like that. So that just struck me as kind of interesting. I'm always a little bit fascinated when somebody decides to put that level of detail about their lives out on the net. I do think it is, to some extent, probably a generational issue. people such as myself, who were already adults when the internet took off, I think for the most part tend to have a little bit different view of privacy, particularly cyber privacy, as compared to younger people who have grown up with this kind of life, and particularly the ones that have grown up with things like Twitter and Facebook and all of this. And we're seeing an interesting kind of mix right now. Even some employers don't quite know how to handle it. Some of them are asking if you go for a job interview, they want access to your Facebook page so they can see, or to your Twitter page, to your Twitter feed, so that they can see some of the things you've posted. Obviously, they're looking for things that would be potentially embarrassing to them. There are varying degrees of agreement about what level of access they should have. And even if it violates the terms of service. If, for example, you're part of an online community and it says you are responsible if you share your password. Please do not share your password or username with anyone. Well, if you go on a job interview and you share it with a prospective employer, does that violate the terms of service for the online community that you're involved in? For some of them, it might. For others, it might not, depending on the terms of service. How many people actually read through the entirety of those terms of service agreements, as opposed to just clicking OK and moving on to post the information that they want to post. So that was it pretty much this weekend, or this week rather. The things that I looked at. I know there's a lot more going on in the Mac world. But it's been a busy week and haven't had an opportunity to check up on every possible thing that's come out this week. Next week, we'll probably have a few more things. Perhaps Rad Dave will be back with us. We'll try to drag Van Smith out of the Canadian wilderness somewhere in the coming weeks and see what he has to say. Hopefully he's enjoying himself. He's been pretty busy lately, and perhaps we are not too far away from a more definitive indication of when Yosemite will be released. I'm not expecting it for another couple of weeks, but I could be wrong. I've certainly been wrong about Apple's release dates before. So I hope that you enjoyed the tips that we had tonight. I'll post the links to some of the things that we talked about, and I'll put the tips in the show thread on the Mac Forum forum in the Sunday Night Chat Show segment, and that may not get posted until tomorrow, so don't panic. I'll try to post an announcement here when that goes up. But you'll be able to see. I'll go ahead and get the Cult of Mac things posted real quickly, and then the others I need to clean up the note for the 2 tips a little bit before I post that to Mac Forums. So if that's the case, I think I want to call it a night and have just a short show tonight. I know you don't want to hear just me by myself, and I got a couple other things I need to take care of. So. Until then, this is going to do it for the Sunday Mac Forum video chat for August 24th. I will see you next weekend. Until then, this is your host Sly Dude, and I hope that you have enjoyed the Mac Forum Sunday video chat.